Awesome. Okay. Hopefully, Twitch, you guys can see and hear me. Um, it's awesome to get to hang out with everyone. I think before we really get into things, I get just a quick preamble. The goal of this conversation is just to jam a little bit on Web3 gaming and where we see the future going, and hopefully, give some ideas for I think we're approaching 3,000 people who signed up for the hackathon already. Give you guys some ideas on what might be cool to build and give you some inspiration. Because we've got a really good set of game builders and people who spend a lot of time and built stuff in the gaming world before, now moving into the blockchain world. And so hopefully it should be a fun discussion and maybe inspire some projects. So before we get into it, why don't we do a quick round of introductions? I can start, and then Rahul, if you want to go after that, and then we'll go from there. I'm Colleen. I joined Solana Labs in March of last year, and I was really the first person here focused on gaming as something that, as an ecosystem that we really wanted to encourage. A bunch of us are gamers internally. Anatoly himself, all of us have played games for decades now, and so we're super excited to help build, the next frontier of Web3 games on Solana. So I've been working with a lot of game studios and the people on this call in that effort.
Yeah, I'm Rahul, and I've been playing games pretty much longer than everybody on this call. I'm much older, and I've been in the gaming industry for many years. I've uh, I've been involved in multiple companies that have sold to larger companies. So I was the founder of a PC gaming company that sold to HP, and then I was involved in this VR AR company that created a headset very similar to Oculus, but it had cameras on the outside. So it was a less isolating experience. That was called Vervana, and that company sold to Apple. Um, and then yeah, I was at Microsoft for a few years. Started Microsoft Ventures, and then after that, I had this like really interesting esports betting company that just got acquired last August by Entain. So I've been in the space for a while, and I play a lot of games still to this day.
Nice. Do I go next? Okay. Hi everyone, my name's Kenny. I'm an econ major from Columbia and then entered financial institutions group at Goldman Sachs Investment Banking after college, so intimately understand finance and economics. Didn't want to be a vampire squid, so I left that to join the gaming industry, where I've been a little known, I guess, profession at the time called virtual economist or monetization designer for the past 9 years. Left working at a number of different studios and like Nexon, Sony Online Entertainment, mostly MMOs there, and most recently at Riot Games, where I was the revenue lead for Wild Rift before leaving to start this new Web3 gaming studio, and we're building on Solana. Our company is called Amihan Entertainment. We're developing a game called Everseed. We teased something super basic about a week and a half ago, and we already got over 20,000 followers. So we're really excited to share more in future conversations. Probably not much in this conversation.
Cool. I'll go last. So, Amy Wu, and I'm currently heading up FTX Ventures at FTX, and also our gaming business. We provide sort of white labeling, wallet, and exchange compliance products for Web2, and also just generally, I think gaming studios are interested in exploring Web3. And yeah, previously I was an investor at Lightspeed, where I led our crypto and gaming investing. And so yeah, I've played games all my life. I'm not sure who's older, Rahul or myself. I'm a bit older than I look, and but so I'm like a lifelong gamer. But then so probably first professionally was about 8 years or so ago. I was at Insight when we acquired Jagex, and so from there was at Discovery, where I did some work in esports, and then have been investing in gaming for a few years.
All right, yeah. So we've got a really nice mix of people being gaming forever, and crypto, and also built awesome games. So should be a fun conversation. First question, I think this is for our resident, game builders. So Rahul and Kenny, what first got you excited about blockchain and gaming and Web3? And related to that, how has that informed the games that you guys are each building now?
Sure, I can start that. So, well, I'm pretty early Bitcoin, and like I started really getting into it in 2012, and I was quite a skeptic, and then 2013 I turned into sort of like a what I would say was really interested in Bitcoin and buying it, and then 2014 I started building on blockchain with this esports company Unicorn, and we built a really neat kind of blockchain backend and payment system for a betting company. Um, we built a full token economy. We took it and put it on the Ethereum blockchain in 2017. Between 2014 and 2017, we built like a pretty big following for Unicorn, and then everything was going great. And then the crypto market collapsed. And when that happened, the SEC started inquiring on a number of different projects. A lot of them were scams, but like ours was actually real. And there was people inside the SEC that even said like, we're actually doing real things, but they still inquired, and it took 2 years, a nightmare process going through. And finally we just said, what do you want? And they just wanted us to kill the token and just focus on the business. Honestly, it was the most difficult experience I'd been through. But the reason I'm saying that, we settled with them, and I didn't lose hope. My partner and I were the first investors in Zed Run. We invested in Zed the minute that Chris reached out to us. We're the largest individual investors in Zed, and I've been in the sort of this Web3 space since then, and early NFTs with CryptoKitties and that sort of thing. And now I realize that there is so much potential as a gamer. There's so much potential building on blockchain. If you're building the games that are sort of native crypto or native to the blockchain, and you're using it for a very particular reason, there's a lot of benefits to it. So regardless of what happens with regulation and that sort of thing, if you're a pioneer, and you want to break new ground, you have to do it. You just have to keep going and building. And the game we're building now is absolutely nuts. And we've connected. Like, I've built this team with people that I've worked with in the past from previous companies, from Microsoft. We have these amazing machine learning people from Microsoft Cyber Defense. We have a game studio that we've built up, building on Unity. And just like people that I've worked with in the past, myself and my partner, and we're just having a lot of fun doing it now. And the nice thing about it is it's not gambling, so I don't have to deal with regulators from the gambling industry and the finance industry, or the U.S. regulators, which can be really hard to navigate.
Totally. So one thing, just because I'm seeing a bunch of MFC love in the chat, you want to give like the quick spiel on what Mecca Fight Club's going to be?
Yeah, so it's the first game where I love games. That this is the dumbest idea I've ever had. I mean, I worked on it with my 19-year-old son, Amr. Like, we were scripting it together, and and it really is just like a ridiculously stupid idea. But I met with my partner David, who used to run the machine learning team at Microsoft Cyber Defense, and he would work on some very serious problems. Like, his team, they were focused on identifying and thwarting nation-state attacks against the United States government, right? Before he joined Irreverent Labs to build the MFC. So the MFC is a game where every single character in the game is an artificially intelligent NPC living on the blockchain as an NFT. And they hatch from these eggs. The eggs are unique, like they're all individually unique, beautiful artwork. Got the best artist that I've ever worked with before. His name is Gear Duran. The guy is a legend. And he does amazing digital art and like paints and that sort of thing. Anyways, the game is based in the future. Aliens land on Earth. They figure that in the year 2060, they landed on Earth, and they figure that Earth is ready to become part of the interstellar network of planets and share technologies and stuff. They land on Earth and they realize, oh my God, these guys are a bunch of idiots. So they left as quickly as they came, but they left behind 41,000 eggs. We didn't know what to do with the eggs. Years later, the eggs started hatching, and these corporate overlords took what hatched from the eggs, and they used them to enslave the human population. And then there was an uprising and a resistance, and the MFC liberated Las Vegas, and we reprogrammed the eggs so that the warbots that hatch actually fight each other. What hatches? Basically, they're robotic roosters and hens. It's a cruelty-free mecha cockfighting game. It's so dumb. It's hilarious. The art is amazing. The characters are funny, but it's basically roosters and hens fighting. And, when they hatch, they name themselves. There's beautiful animations. You've got some crazy, really interesting, names that come out, and they fight each other as soon as they see each other. And your job as a player is to learn about your character, and make sure they are in the right fights. That's a summary.
Love it. All right. Yeah, the artwork I can say is really awesome. The eggs look dope. Okay. Kenny, same question for your questions, which is what got you excited about Web3 initially, and how is that influencing the game you're building?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I kind of had the opposite story of Rahul. I was pretty much a crypto skeptic up until maybe last year. So when we started our studio, it was basically through bootstrap funds that I had actually saved up and made money from a bet I made on gold. I should have bet on Bitcoin, but whatever.
That's
Um,
ironic.
yeah, our studio's vision is to equalize opportunity for all through games, and at first that basically stems internally with our own internal hiring goals, where over half of our studio is represented by women and non-binary, and we hire from 3 different continents, and that ethos actually, when we got introduced to blockchain gaming in March last year, as I dug deeper into it, I realized that actually you could solve a lot of the world's like real tough world problems through Web3 and through crypto, and through blockchain gaming. And so, let's talk about economic inequality, for example. A lot of people think and FUD crypto for basically exacerbating the issue. But if you read, this book by Thomas Piketty called Capital in the 21st Century, he talks about 2 variables, R and G. R is the rate of return that you get from investing in assets and capital like real estate or stocks or whatever. And G is basically the representation of the amount of growth in your wage for your job. And Piketty's thesis is basically if you take R minus G and chart that over time, we are now basically at the greatest moment of economic inequality since Victorian era England, like right post Industrial Revolution. So how do you basically solve the economic inequality issue? Thomas Piketty says, let's just have a really progressive tax system and tax the rich. That is not going to work. That has not worked for centuries. The rich hate paying taxes, and so to reduce R to solve that problem won't solve it. So the only way to solve it is by increasing G, and by basically giving every single person in the world the ability to actually invest their money and generate capital and returns like they would if they were if they were rich. And I think that is basically, if you kind of rewind all the way back to the underpinnings of economic philosophy like Marxist philosophy and his theories about means of production, and about how the bourgeoisie exists because the production is owned in the hands of the capitalists, and the working class do not have the means to basically pay for factories or machines or things like this. But in the digital sphere, increasingly the means of production is basically being put more into the hands of people, to anybody who has access to a device connected to the internet. And the barrier to entry for somebody to actually create something in the digital sphere is getting lower each and every day. And so in my opinion, I think like the aspect of lifting people out of poverty on a massive scale, it is most effective through this medium of blockchain games. And the other thing that's really ironic is that if you think about the kind of second and third order effects of what happens if people migrate towards a digital economy instead of being grounded in a physical economy, a lot of the FUD that people basically throw shade at for blockchain gaming, such as climate change issues, those would get solved too. So what is the biggest impact that we have had negatively on carbon emissions as a human race over the past couple of decades is by us listening to Samuel L. Jackson and staying the F at home during quarantine pandemic. And the irony is that like people who say, oh my God, Bitcoin and Ethereum and whatever is destroying the world in terms of carbon emissions, actually what's destroying carbon emissions is by you turning on your car and driving to work, right? So I just think that for me that's what gets me excited about blockchain gaming, is that we could actually create a whole new digital society that is equal, that there is no racism sexism, ageism, because people have anonymous or pseudo-anonymous identities, you can solve so many problems just by, just by taking, the initiative to just like change your frame of mind. Sorry, I went on a little bit of a
That's
tangent,
awesome.
but
Yeah, it's
Love the passion, Kenny.
exactly.
I'm so tired of the FUD. I'm really so tired of the ignorance. There's so much ignorance. Like the idea that somebody like game developers think that anybody who hasn't worked in game developer designing a game before shouldn't have any business designing a game. I agree, but but a game designer or developer who has no background in econ or finance has no right to basically judge the actual kind of like grounds of crypto or Web3 from an economic or financial background if they don't actually have the expertise to do so.
Right.
100%. All right, that was awesome, and actually, it weaves really nicely into the next question I had, which was, I guess Amy can take this one initially. We're obviously all excited about Web3 gaming, but there are plenty of skeptics, and there have been some very notable sort of outrage from the gaming community against the Ubisoft NFT implementation. The Stalker team backed off from NFTs. The Worms team, for those of you guys who know the Worms game, they also backed off from NFTs. In fact, I'm seeing in our Twitch chat, there's a few people talking about how you shouldn't force Web3 and blockchain into every game, which I think all of us would agree.
100%.
But I guess so. The broad question there is, Amy, like, what do you think it takes to have gamers, give Web3 and NFTs a shot?
Yeah, it's the negative reaction has been, I think, more potent than most of us had expected, although it's not necessarily more so than than the AAA community's reactions towards like free to play and mobile. Like when that sort of came into being, several years ago now, and a few years ago maybe it was like at its peak, and so I mean, at the end of the day, gamers are interestingly like some of the fastest to adopt new technology, but then also kind of are pretty opinionated about what is going on with their game. I mean, like all of us have experienced, I literally experienced firsthand what happens when you mess with a game that, like, hundreds of thousands or millions of people are like playing every day, particularly in the MMO world. And so I think, I think like some of the larger game platforms and studios are rightfully like sort of cautious around how best to implement Web3, because not only do they have to deal with employees and gamers that are that still need to, I think, be educated and and really understand what it's about, but also they have to deal with the regulatory scrutiny they inevitably will have. And so, couple of thoughts. I do think, similarly to the free to play mobile space, it's going to take somebody to just come out and launch an amazing game. And so that the Web3 stuff. So I have I'm like less idealistic I like about it. I'm more like, I personally think super cool, like innovative platform. Like you can actually do some really cool like economy things and design, incorporate that, and plus a more equitable ownership model. Those are all really great things, but at the end of the day, it's a game first. And so a team that really knows how to make great games to do that, but like innovatively kind of weaves in blockchain technology is probably going to do that. And over time, and similarly to free to play mobile, there could be large communities of people, a large amounts of gamers that never actually like believe in Web3, no matter like how big this industry becomes, and that's totally fine. Like there's going to be new believers and people who are passionate about it who's going to enter this space. And so yeah, that's some like thoughts, and yeah, like I think like there are like super exploitative like Ponzi scheme like Web3 games out there, and they definitely did not help the narrative, I think, of like that a lot of gamers have, that this isn't an exploit and money grabbing scheme. Literally a lot of these games are. However, there's going to be certain types of, let's say, like traders, the crypto traders, and people who will like honestly have fun like with the GameFi dynamics of those games. There's kind of fun for everybody, But like for the vast majority of players that are looking for a very rich, in-depth like gaming experience, like it will come. Like, we are seeing them in the market as in people are building amazing games right now.
100%. I agree. Yeah, like it's like step one for Web3 games to get adoption, to me at least, is like the games have got to be good. And then, step two is like, okay, then make the economies rich and have people engage, et cetera. So agree with all of that.
I think it's interesting. Like I've been a gamer forever, and I believe gamers are fickle. Like they tend to if they get it behind like a movement or something, or they have something in their heads, they'll kind of pack together and say, yeah, no, this sucks. Look, at the end of the day, there is a crossover between hardcore gamers and people who are interested in crypto. And now there's a crossover there. The thing is, no one has really seen like like a deep use case for NFTs in games. So the way gamers look at it is, oh my God, I got to spend $500 on an NFT to play this game. Like I don't want to do that, right? I don't need that. It's just a money grab and this and that. But for us, it's easy because we're a native Web3 game development studio, right? And I think a game, if you think about sort of the future of let's call it the metaverse. The metaverse word is overly used, but I think this is important for people to understand. The last industrial revolution was built by bricklayers and laborers, right? And they didn't get to participate in the upside of that creation. Like when they created New York, the bricklayers and laborers, were basically walked all over, and they didn't get to participate in the upside. It was the developers that did. But this next industrial revolution is happening online, and it's being created by creators, artists, engineers, and like participants who get to participate in the upside of this world that we're creating, right? And from a game standpoint, the games that are being built, like when you take a traditional game like a Call of Duty and you say, I'm going to slap it on blockchain, of course you're going to piss everybody off. That's a dumb idea, right? Like you have to have a real reason to have blockchain. And so for me, with the Mecca Fight Club, our goal is to build an attachment from the user to their character. So much so that they carry around their chicken coops in their pockets. They can go to a bar and they can have a bar fight in AR using their phone or their glasses, which are coming, right? And do it in a bar with their friends. And the entertainment value that we create is so awesome because it's funny. We're creating these shorts where people can share it on TikTok and Instagram and that sort of thing. And they're building a bond with their character that they own. Like I play League of Legends all the time, right? I like it, but I don't own Teemo. I have no attachment to Fiddlesticks or Master Yi or whoever, right? I have nothing. In fact, I have a whole bunch of skins that are useless. Like I think I spent I probably have like $3,000 worth of skins in this account. And what am I going to do when I get bored of League, right? I'll just give the account to somebody and here's $3,000 worth of skins, go play it. But in this world, I own a character. Let's say when my egg hatches, I own, I don't know, Robocock, right? Or Oprah Winfrey. And and she's just awesome. Like she kicks ass in the Coctagon. She's winning fights, beating the shit out of everybody. And then I take her to a bar and I do videos and pictures with Oprah Winfrey. Like how awesome is that, right? And I share it online. People go, what the fuck is this guy doing? Like who is this? And that type of entertainment is super interesting. And then on top of that, these birds are earning in the ring as they fight. And the nuance here is the birds are earning, right? You're not. The birds are artificially intelligent, and every time they fight, they're fighting for these things called box, like buck, But they're fighting for box, and they use the box to in various ways in the game. You use it to revive your character. You use it to breed with, and the breeding game that we're creating is amazing. Everything that we're doing is a game within the game, and the neat thing about Web3, if you're a game studio, and this from your Riot days, Kenny. In a game studio, you build a game end to end, right? And you have to go through bug fixing, you have to do all this stuff. Then you go into a beta, and then you run it, and it's just like end to end thinking about everything. With Web3, you can do it in bits. So we're going to open up cockpit fights almost immediately after our first eggs drop. And then shortly after that, we're going to liberate Las Vegas, and we're going to have the Coctagon, which is like the whole skyline has changed. It's the year 2140. Everything is different except maybe you see the big wheel, you see the MGM Grand, but then you have everything is centered around the Coctagon. And then every few months, we got this massive tournament called the Ecocalypse, where it's like the big Royal Rumble of mecha cockfighting. and it's hilarious. It is really funny. And the last thing I'll say about this is, when we pitched this to A16Z, we basically said, look, we're not going to raise money. We just want to talk to them to find out what they're looking for. Ariana Simpson was in the room with two other ladies, Kara Wu and someone else, who
Jane?
recently started. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
They're
three
great.
women were in the room. Actually, there was no men in the room, and it was me and David talking about this game. And we're like, what are we gonna say? Like we have a picture of one of our roosters. His name is BBC, but he's like a limited, beautiful
Oh,
black.
God.
He's this color Centurion black, which is this like really rare color. Like less than 3% of the birds are gonna have this color, but his name happens to be BBC. And then we have like this other bird, honeypot, who's this like hen. And so we just said, look, we got to embrace this. We use the word cock not liberally. We use it 3 times in the game. The coctagon, the apocalypse, and the cockpit. Right, that's it. But the community is going to run with it, and they're going to do what they want. And we just basically started to pitch this. And Ariana's looking at her papers, writing notes. Didn't say a thing for 8 minutes. And I'm like, oh, shit, I don't know if this is going well. And then I said, look, here's the picture of the hen. And Honeypot comes up, and she's this beautiful pink hen. And by the way, hens are limited. There are only 40% of the population are hens, and they're smarter than roosters. She looks up, she starts laughing. She says, now that's cool. And that's what it is. It's about making people laugh again and giving a an attachment to the character that you cannot have in a regular game. And this is what blockchain makes amazing.
Yeah, I love that story by Rahul because I just think people who basically discount Web3 gaming, they don't understand that actually it's unwinding a lot of the BS of the gaming industry for the past couple of decades of free to play. And let me explain why. So in 2000, if Rahul tried to pitch this game idea to A16Z pre Web3, he would probably get laughed out of the room, right? But and the reason why is because like starting in 2009 when iOS released, they had like these, the charts that they basically had in their app store were top free, top paid, top grossing. And the only way to basically consistently top the charts is to be on top grossing to get free organic traffic. And so that was basically the birth of pre-crypto mechanism design, because what did game developers do? They tried to game the system and create monetization systems to get people to spend as much money as possible so that they would get top grossing and then lower their cost of acquisition cost, which creates a positive feedback loop, which basically creates the kind of like stagnant free-to-play system that exists today. Before we pivoted to incorporating blockchain into our thesis for our game, when we were pitching to VCs, they were telling us, why don't you make a match 3 game? Why don't you make a merge game? Why don't you make a puzzle? Why don't you make a derivative game? And I think this is what people don't understand, like gamers and game developers both, is that Web3 and blockchain allows the developers to go straight to the consumer and be like, hey, you want a chicken fight that's like, robotic and cool and mechanized and you have all these like great puns. Vote with your time and attention, right? Vote with your wallet. And instead of basically going through the circuitous loop of having to basically kowtow and bow to Apple and Google and to VCs and these gatekeepers, you go straight to the consumer and you give them what they want. And they don't want more match 3 games. They don't want more merge games. They want innovation. They want creativity. And that's the game changer, really. So please stop making derivative games if you're a game developer in Web3. Like be bold, be creative, like be out there, because you're gonna find your 1,000, 10,000 true fans, and they're going to carry you, into the sunset.
Yeah, the
That's
last thing I'll
awesome.
just say on that is there's a lot of like old game studios that were having problems raising money, and so now they're NFTs and Web3. So you see these like kind of like crappy sort of FPS games coming up and saying we're Web3 and here's our characters, and those are going to fail. They're just going to fail because there's no deep thinking as to why blockchain. But when you really understand blockchain, and good game studios are building teams, good Web3 game studios are building teams where you've got a really deep blockchain discipline, and then you have a really, really deep discipline around creating really great games. And then our team happens to have like this crazy machine learning team who are working on how many clocks per second they can put out, or per hour they can render. Like it's so ridiculous that this is the kind of stuff they're working on, but it's really funny to watch. But my point is that, you got these three sort of disciplines merging together. And somebody brought up, I think it was you, Colleen, that brought up earlier about this. Some of these games are building these economies that really resemble. They're like basically, like a few feet away from being a Ponzi scheme, right? Like they really resemble a Ponzi scheme because, if you don't have consistent user growth, those economies fall apart. So one of the interesting things we did was we built this 100-year economy simulation during our talking to VCs. And we're building an economy where it's like a multi-tiered economy where creators are going to be able to participate in this world. Players are going to be able to participate. So there's actually like a real currency inside that has a sustainable economy that resembles a small country. And that's the kind of thinking you need when you build these kind of games. And if you do, it's going to be successful. Yeah. Or maybe it was Amy that said it. Whoever said it was
Amy,
really
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess just to riff on that a little bit, one thing I think about is like how the fact that, for example, NFTs as game assets, introduces like a perpetual revenue stream for that game and for those assets. Like if you, for example, always earn 2.5% or whatever on secondary trades, like all of a sudden, hopefully, or it's possible that maybe it orients, game builders to think about, to your point, the 100-year economy for their game, and like how can they always have people engage with those assets and then also earn because of that. But anyways, I guess to transition a little bit, and this is actually kind of leading off what Kenny was saying about like encouraging people to be bold. What are things that you all want to see being tried out in the Web3 world for gaming? And this could be like, maybe it's games or types of games that you'd want to see people make, or like mechanics or something out there. And especially because, a bunch of the people I assume in Twitch chat will be participating in the hackathon. Maybe we can give them some ideas. I guess I can start as an example. A game that I personally really enjoyed. It's called Darkest Dungeon. It's like this roguelike game where you basically start the game actually, and you get 4 randomly generated characters to start with, and you go into dungeons with these characters, and if they die in the dungeon, it's permadeath. And you have to go find new characters to recruit, and those are also randomly generated. So I think there's kind of this awesome potential for something like Darkest Dungeon to be an NFT game where, you get up some starter NFTs that have random stats, and then you go into dungeons with them, and if you survive, then maybe the stats of those characters gets upgraded. But if they die, the NFT gets burned, and you have sort of this cool economy, and maybe like the really grizzled veterans who have made it through multiple dungeons and are high level, like, are NFTs that are worth a lot because people have really taken the time and care to make sure that those characters survive, the trials and tribulations of dungeons. So anyways, that's like an example of like a game and maybe a mechanic that I don't really see out there right now that would be awesome. But I'm curious if you guys have stuff like that that's like, oh man, it'd be so cool to see a game that did X or Y.
Anyone want to take it? I mean, I can give you some ideas on the type of technologies that people should be, looking at. Look, when we first started this space, the first thing I said is it's like a cliff to onboard onto a Web3 game. Like, it's a nightmare, first of all. Like having to deal with Ethereum and gas, and then having to go to like a layer 2 and deal with like wrapped Ethereum. Oh my God, like how do you explain this to my mom that she can't play Bejeweled? Like, she has to do all this shit to get onboarded onto the game in the first place. So that's one of the reasons that we chose Solana. Like, we felt Solana is a really nice kind of layer 1, like low transaction fees and high amount of transaction stuff. We picked Solana for those reasons. But then you have the playability problem. So let's say you turn the cliff into a hill. It's still a hill. It's still a problem. You still got to connect your Phantom wallet. And then you got to worry about like the shit that's going on now with Phantom. Like, people are draining wallets because they get hacked. So, you got to teach people about like online security and and managing their passwords and all of that stuff. And then it's the playability. How do you make a game accessible so people can play it so it's not an effort? like it's really hard to, I love Zed, and don't get me wrong, Zed's my favorite. Like they paved the way. I love those guys a lot, and we've talked about it over the years, and they continue to improve. But like, racing horses is an effort, right? And like I have a stable of horses. I have like 210 horses now, and and I just can't race them. I don't have the time to go in and pick the race and like do this. So like either I hire someone to race them for me, or whatever that is. That the neat thing about Web3 is you can have these like scholar programs, or these things where you can have people around the world race your horses for you, and they split the revenue and that sort of thing. So I guess the tools to do that kind of stuff without making it like scammy, and making it really easy, and then making the hill more of like a gradual onboarding. So help like come up with tools to be able to do that, and we'll take advantage of those tools, stuff like that.
Well,
Yeah.
two quick things on my side. It'd be really cool to play like a live MMO that has sort of tokenized economies. That would be awesome. I would totally play that myself. And then in the area of economy design, be curious Kenny's views on this, but it would be cool to see people innovating in the stablecoin area, like with as one of the currencies in game. And I've heard some really interesting ideas. There's a like algorithmic stablecoin approach. There is a like sort of denominated stablecoin approach, and then some people are actually thinking about just using, for example, the Solana token as a relatively more stable token as part of like the tokens to be included in game. So yeah, I think that'll be really interesting to see more of.
I haven't heard of the stablecoin innovation, so maybe we should catch up after this one-on-one. I'd love to hear what's going on there, Amy. But
yeah, I mean, at a high level, it's basically like the one token being used for governance and also in-game currency is just extraordinarily volatile, right? It's really volatile, and like I don't like you're not trying to basically have your token 1000x and then basically like stop players from onboarding the game, right? It's like I think right now a lot of blockchain games are excited getting like 15,000 like people playing, and I'm like, okay, actually eventually you need to be playing for like 50 million people playing a game, and that's sort of like the that would be an awesome like goal, right? But then for that number, like how do you encourage people like new players to join at various points in the player journey, especially if the token is so volatile? I think that's what a lot of people are thinking through right now.
Got it. I have some deeper thoughts on that, but probably not ready to share publicly until about a month later. But what's interesting is I agree with what's funny is that I think, Colleen, if you are a fan of that game you mentioned, Darkest Dungeon, and if you're a fan of the MMO game, I think you'll be a fan of ours. We'll tease out more details over the coming weeks.
Actually.
Yeah,
I can't wait to see it. You got a pretty cool team, so it's
I want to be on the beta.
Thank you. I think for me, I've always loved MMOs, hence why I worked on so many projects. I'd love to see more of them, but I would also love to see teams that are trying to accomplish making something of that grand of a scale think about the production process in a more kind of like in a smarter way. And so, like for us, we're not trying to ship an MMO. We're not trying to take 5 years or whatever to kind of just like be stealth and then do a grand reveal. We're going to ship a core loop that's very replayable and repeatable. Colleen's smiling a little bit, and then we'll expand and add more features and systems on top until it basically can evolve into becoming an MMO. So a great example of this is like Warframe. Warframe's story is really incredible if you think about their trajectory from like alpha all the way to Plains of Eidolon update. So I'm excited to basically see really creative, ambitious projects, but led by teams who actually know how to keep the community engaged through through the years as they kind of like are open with their development, because times are wasted and nobody can wait like forever for these big things to come out. So.
Colleen, I'm watching the Twitch chat.
The Twitch chat is really something. Yeah.
Oh man. Don't do it. Whoever's like planning on turning that into a meme, please don't do it. Oh no.
So yeah, Twitch chat is one thing, which is hilarious. But to Kenny's point, I 100% agree. Like, the risk with spending 5 years launching a game now is that like we have no idea what the planet's going to look like, especially sort of Web3 games are going to look like.
Yeah.
And so if you sort of build in a vacuum, I think that you're just such a high risk that you're not going to succeed. Like the world will have changed under you by the time you launch. And so like this iteration I think is really important. Of course, there's a balance. Like obviously gamers, and I think generally often rightfully so, are kind of frustrated with this like people launching buggy, janky ass V1 games that are really not ready for prime time as early access, but cost full price, etc. So you don't want to do that, but you also don't want to spend forever. So there's like some middle ground that you've got to find, but that's the challenge.
Yeah.
All right, we're coming at time, so I'll kind of maybe leave it to sort of closing remarks if you guys have anything you want to say, whether it's like ideas for people. Oh, we lost Amy. Oh, she's back. On like what they ought to build, things that you're excited about, when they can expect to hear more about your respective projects for I guess Rahul and Kenny who have games coming. Yeah, I guess kind of whatever you guys want to get in before we close this out.
Yeah, look, I think there's been sort of like a few waves in crypto, and I've been through sort of all the market cycles with it, and when you look at the last big wave was sort of the ICO wave in 2017. Say like 97% either went away or were regulated to death or were or failed because there were scams or whatever. But they brought in a lot more people into the crypto space, and those people sort of they disappeared for a while, then they came back when things started to come back. Now we're having this massive wave of artists, creators, celebrities that that are coming in for NFTs. And that wave will stay. However, there's going to be like a 97% failure rate because not everyone's going to want a PFP picture. And these PFP projects are definitely over commoditized now. Being part of a club is cool, but there's only going to be so many of them that are going to be a CryptoPunks or a Bored Ape Yacht Club, right? You're just not going to be able to sort of replicate that. And so the next wave is these play to earn games, and gaming and entertainment is the space, the prime space for this if you do it properly. So what I would say is knowing that, and if I was an artist, if I was a creator, I would look for the best studios that are building really great games or really great entertainment experiences and go work for them. Like if you're looking for a job, come talk to us. That's one thing. The other thing is, just make it easier for creators to get into the space with like really interesting tools. Like if, for example, all of the technology that we're building at Mecca Fight Club is going to be packaged and licensed via Irreverent Labs, right? So we're building AI technology to bring NFTs to life in games. And so the idea is that we're breathing life into art. And what we want is artists who can create stuff, who want to be part of that, to create, to have tools to be able to create and put it on the blockchain easily. So I can just think that, in a hackathon, you want to work on very focused, very small problems. You don't want to say like, I'm going to build a game, but what you want to do is say like, I'm going to go focus on this one area for onboarding onto a game. I'm going to make the game easier to onboard. I'm going to work on something for artists to be able to create their NFTs and put them into some sort of, cross-chain type thing or whatever. You got to pick a problem and go solve it.
Yeah, I'd like to expand a little bit on a point Rahul said, where he talked about like the saturation of PFPs in the NFT space and the next kind of like step evolution being gaming. From a data perspective, since I had the ability to look at a whole bunch of different games and genres and look at their data, there's one thing that I actually found in common that stays consistent across all of them, and that is there's a strong positive correlation between amount of screen time or time you spend in game and the amount that somebody's willing to basically spend or the revenue per generated per that player in that game. And I think this is really important because as much as I love my Azuki profile picture, I can only spend so many hours in the day staring at it or admiring its art, you know. And games, basically, you can lose, you know, hours of each day, every day, into a game, and it be entirely enjoyable and fun and immersive. And the only way to actually have the value of these digital assets match the kind of the price of these digital assets match the value given, is if actually, you know, you're creating an interactive experience, a game that captivates, you know, players for a prolonged period of time, for many hours a day, for many days a week, for many weeks in a year. And um, and I think that's really important. Is that, you know, when you're thinking about this hackathon, like, the question that I ask myself, and I love asking our team to ask themselves, is, you know, ask yourself if you'd be happy building what you're building if you couldn't profit from it. If the answer is yes, you are building something sustainable. And I think that's a really, I think, like, there needs to be an evolution, a maturity of the industry where, you know, in the absence of clear regulation from the government, you know, we need to actually do a better ourselves to hold ourselves to a higher ethical standard, because that's the only way that we can actually attract the masses to Web3, to basically really change the public opinion about blockchain gaming, is by delivering, you know, solid, sustainable products that people will enjoy for years. So hope that inspires you all.
Amy, anything you'd add?
Yeah, I mean, at FTX Ventures, I mean, we were constantly investing in game studios. So, we're, you know, please reach out, and like, we'd love to talk to people. And I would say, in terms of thoughts, on what we're looking for, you know, like, I really do think that there's kind of two camps that probably a little bit less excited about. One of them is like, you know, you're making a solid Web2 game and you're just tacking on, like, you know, NFTs and tokens. I don't think that's going to get the Web3 community excited about that, you know?
Or the
Like, I mean,
gaming
it could
community. It's not going to get either community excited about it.
it's not going to get either
Why would
community.
I why would I not play League of Legends
Yeah,
and
exactly.
just play, you know, Web3 version, right? So
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and even in Web2 games, it's long been, you know, sort of proven out that, like, making a derivative game really does, like, a copycat of another game does not lead to, like, a great game. Actually, it's like, okay, well, why don't I just play Hearthstone or something like that, rather than
100%.
the
Exactly.
of, like, you know, RPG that's like that launched. So definitely looking for somebody who is looking to innovate, to, like, Kenny and Rahul's point, that actually loves Web3 for what it is, and has kind of brainstormed and thought deeply about the different mechanics that they've thought about implementing. I think that's super exciting. Make on the PFP side. So I have a slightly different view from Rahul, which is that I actually think that the PFP, like, NFT world, is going to develop separately from the gaming one. Like, and in the NFT world, what we're seeing is the creation of, like, straight up brands right now.
Yeah, that's
right.
fair. That's
Like
fair.
Yeah.
Bored Ape and others, and that's the sort of thinking that is going to make a great project on that side. But then, you know, obviously the gaming side is, like, starts with the game. And so the last thing I'll leave people with is that we've seen so many times, like, that, you know, having the right folks on the team, not just, like, people who understand the crypto side, but also, like, game design, you know, the economy, depending on what kind of game you're making. And
Economy is super important. You're
yeah,
absolutely right, Amy. Like,
so
it's like
important.
you're not building a traditional game studio, right? You need
Yeah.
people that are deep in crypto.
You're building a
Understand.
digital nation or society, because you have, like, trade, you have, like, you know,
Yes, exactly.
yeah.
But, you know, my CTO, my partner, David Reschino, I always say he's the smartest guy in the world. This guy actually, when we got together, the first thing he said is, we don't want blockchain developers. I said, what do you mean? He goes, look, you know, I hate to say it, but, like, most blockchain developers aren't very good, like, software engineers, right? Like, they actually just sort of learned how to do blockchain by, like, hacking and that sort of thing. He said, we really need really great software engineers, because they'll be able to pick up the blockchain very quickly. And it's so true. I couldn't believe it, but it's absolutely right. You know, like, if you have a deep software engineering experience, to start building on Solana and to start doing really cool things, it's actually not hard. And you can do some amazing things. So So, but I love what you're saying, Amy. I think you're right. I think they do have, they will sort of live separately, but they'll also merge together, because you'll see PFP projects come into games like ours where, we have these screens around the Coctagon where, we can feature art and that sort of thing, because we're inviting creators to come into the world. I guess my point is we're not going to see these like derivative copycat PFP projects from other chains, like surviving if they're not doing something really unique. That's kind of my
Oh,
point.
sure.
And so you see a lot of that happening with some of these exchanges these marketplaces that just don't really care. And that has to change. So you got to start curating them properly, picking the right projects, and getting behind the right people. And part of the anonymity of Web3 is also a dangerous thing too, as we've seen with many of these rug pulls that are happening. That has to stop. It has to stop.
Yeah,
You're better off
100%.
dealing with docs teams. I didn't even know what a docs team was until this whole thing started. Like, I'm a
Also,
docs
really
team.
don't we our team actually internally really hates that term docs,
Yeah,
because if
yeah,
you
I don't
if
like it. I don't like it.
yeah
And when we were building our site, we have this designer who's kind of like really deep into Web3, and he says, "Do you guys want to be doxed or undoxed?" I'm like, "What does that even mean?" So like even having that conversation is weird to me. It has to stop, I think. So, anyways, yeah.
Yeah, I
Alrighty.
think I agree on the anonymity thing, because if you're making a game, you're spending years on it, and so you like revealing your identity basically shows that you're committed and you're not going to,
Or
bow
at the
out.
very least, reveal your identity to your investors and the marketplaces that you're working with, because
Yeah.
they're the ones who are putting their names on it, and they're the
Yes.
ones taking the risk, right? You don't have to be public with everybody, but like certainly with the people that are backing you. If they're going to put their name on you, they better dox you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we're coming at time, so I think I'll wrap us up here. Thank you so much, all of you guys, for joining. I mean, it's actually a bummer. There's so much stuff that we didn't get to talk about, like interoperability and GameFi, all this stuff. I had these questions, but that's okay. Maybe it'll be a part 2 some point. So thanks a ton, all of you guys, for joining. And also shout out to the Twitch chat for this stream. You guys have been absolutely comical. And it looks like there's like a small community forming and stuff. So anyways, seems like everyone had some fun. I know I certainly did. Cheers, everyone.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks for inviting us,
Yeah.
Clean.
Nice seeing you all.
Thanks, Blaine. See you guys.